Today, we're diving into the incredible story of how a forgotten, moldy dish in a London lab ended up becoming one of the most important discoveries in all of human history, a discovery that literally redefined medicine as we know it.
It's almost impossible for us to really wrap our heads around this today, but let's just start there. Let's try to understand the terrifying reality of medicine in the early 20th century. This was a world with no safety net, where the smallest infection could spiral into a life-or-death battle.
So, back then, even with doctors taking every precaution they could, common bacteria were just an undefeated enemy. A simple cut while gardening, a complication during childbirth, even a planned surgery, all of these things were massive, massive risks. Hospitals were places people often went to die from infections they just couldn't fight off.
Right, so this was a time when medical science had gotten just good enough to know what was killing people, but it was still totally powerless to stop it. And that was the critical, gaping hole in medicine. Doctors could look under a microscope, they could identify the exact Staphylococcus bacteria that was invading a wound, but they had absolutely no weapon to fight it with. Humanity was, plain and simple, losing the war against infection.
Okay, so now let's get to the moment where everything starts to change. And, like so many huge leaps in science, this didn't start with some grand plan. Nope, it started with a bit of luck and one very, very observant scientist in London.
And here he is. Meet our protagonist, Dr. Alexander Fleming. Now, he wasn't looking for a miracle cure or anything like that. He was simply studying the common bacteria that caused so much death and disease. And it turns out, his little habit of not immediately cleaning up his lab station, well, that was about to kickstart a revolution.
So the story goes, Fleming comes back from a holiday and notices something that most researchers would have just tossed in the trash, a contaminated experiment. But he looked closer, and he saw that all around this little patch of fuzzy green mold, there was a perfect, clear circle, a kill zone, where the deadly staph bacteria just couldn't grow. What an incredible observation.
And this was the truly revolutionary part. For the first time in history, someone had found a weapon that specifically targeted the invading bacteria while leaving the body's own cells completely unharmed. This wasn't just another antiseptic that killed everything. This was a potential magic bullet.
But here's the crazy twist in the story. Despite this incredible breakthrough, the discovery was basically ignored. It was almost forgotten for over a decade. The miracle cure just sat on a shelf.
You see, Fleming and other scientists quickly ran into some major roadblocks. The mold juice, as they called it, was just incredibly fragile and unstable. Getting a pure form of it seemed impossible, and producing anything more than a tiny, tiny amount was completely out of the question. It really just seemed like a laboratory curiosity, not a practical medicine.
The feeling at the time was so pessimistic. Even from its own discoverer. And with Fleming himself doubting its future, the potential miracle cure was effectively shelved. It became little more than a footnote in a scientific journal.
But then, the absolute catastrophe of the Second World War created a desperate, urgent need that would bring penicillin roaring back into the spotlight.
Just think about that for a second. The biggest threat to a soldier wasn't always the bullet or the shrapnel itself, but the infection that would set in days later. The staggering death toll from things like sepsis and gangrene forced scientists to get desperate and search for a solution, any solution.
And this is where our story gets its next set of heroes. A couple of scientists at Oxford University, Howard Florey and Ernst Chain, they stumbled upon Fleming's old, forgotten paper. And they believed that with new chemical techniques, they could actually succeed where Fleming had failed. They decided to take on the challenge.
So after years of really painstaking work, they finally did it. They purified a small amount, and they gave it to a policeman who was literally dying from a massive infection that all started with a simple scratch from a rose thorn. The results were miraculous. His raging fever just dropped. The infection actually started to retreat.
But then, the unthinkable happened. Tragically, heartbreakingly, they ran out. They had used the entire world's supply on this one man, and they just couldn't produce more in time. The infection came roaring back.
The policeman died, but that absolutely devastating event became the ultimate proof of concept. You see, his death wasn't a failure of the drug itself, it was a failure of supply. It proved penicillin's incredible power, and it lit a fire under the Allied governments to create an urgent global mission to produce this stuff on a massive scale.
And that brings us to our final section, the incredible, all-out industrial effort to turn this laboratory curiosity into a life-saving medicine for millions and millions of people.
The speed of progress from this point was just astonishing. Fueled by the war, a huge joint effort between the UK and the US completely transformed production. By D-Day in 1944, every Allied soldier carried this new miracle drug, and the impact was immediate. Deaths from infected wounds just absolutely plummeted.
And so, for their collective, world-changing work, the Nobel Prize was rightfully awarded to all three key scientists. To Fleming for that initial spark of genius, and to Florey and Chain for fanning that spark into a world-saving fire. It was truly a victory for collaborative science.
And yet, in his moment of ultimate triumph, Fleming issued this chilling and incredibly prophetic warning. He actually foresaw a future where bacteria could evolve to fight back against his own discovery, a problem we are grappling with more than ever today.
Penicillin didn't just cure infections, it fundamentally remade our world. It unlocked complex surgeries that were totally impossible before, it made childbirth drastically safer, and it helped add decades to the average human lifespan. It left us with an incredibly powerful tool and a profound responsibility to use it wisely. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other accidents are just waiting in labs right now, ready to change our future?